Hi there, it's Christy with the Chirp YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me today. I put up a poll a couple of days ago asking what you thought that the most helpful video would be for me to do next. I don't know if you noticed, but they were all in a sort of similar vein with just a different topic slightly. The similar vein is that they all have to do with supports in the home. The thing that's different is that there are a variety of different areas where we might want to know more about providing support in home. I'm going to start with sensory supports for home, and because it's such a huge category, I'm going to split it into the individual topics within the umbrella of sensory disorders. So hopefully people will be able to watch them in a short period of time and implement the ideas without investing a huge amount of time. I have tons and tons of videos on sensory issues, and I have put them all in a playlist for you, which I will put a link to right there. So you can click on that if you would like and have a little browse through all of the different videos about sensory issues that you might wish to watch. In this video, I'm going to talk about the very first sensory area, which is visual sensory needs. Now let's talk about what the sensory system is. The sensory system is the way that our bodies process sensory input that come in through our senses, believe it or not. Sensory. So for example, things that you touch are processed by your sensory system. Things that you smell, things that you see, things that you hear, as well as some other senses like where your body is in space and how much pressure there is coming to your joints and your muscles and your ligaments. These are all different ways of experiencing the sensory world. And things can go wrong in how the body processes sensory stimuli. Many kids these days now have difficulty processing sensory stimuli appropriately. And you can see some strange behavior when that is the case. You can see some challenging behavior when children are having sensory needs. If we can meet those sensory needs in ways that are more appropriate, then a lot of times we don't see those same kinds of challenging behaviors because the child is having that need met in an appropriate way. The sensory system currently is recognized as having 8 distinct parts. Gustatory, which is taste, olfactory, which is smell, auditory, which is hearing, visual, which is visual, tactile, which is through the skin, proprioception, which is how much pressure is coming to your joints and your muscles and your ligaments, vestibular, which is where your body is in space, mediated by your vestibular canal, which is in your inner ear, and interoception, which is how the body is working on the inside, things such as hunger, the need to use the bathroom, things like that. There is also a potential 9th area, which is the passing of time. What we're going to be talking about in this video series is when children need more input in a particular area. These kids are called sensory seekers. In a separate video as part of this series, I will address sensory avoiders, kids who don't like certain textures, certain tastes, certain light configurations, that kind of thing. Keep in mind that a child can be sensory seeking in one of these 8 modalities, but sensory avoiding in another one, or 3 other ones. And of course, in the same day, a child might avoid certain textures and seek out other textures. It's a confusing issue. And so as we're getting into this, I very much recommend that you find an occupational therapist who is a specialist in the area of sensory disorders and sensory processing to help you figure out your child's sensory needs. Keep in mind that not all occupational therapists are specialists in this area, so you want to make sure that you find someone who is. It requires some postgraduate school training in the area of sensory integration, sensory processing, in order to be well prepared to help families in this area, because it's a very specific niche that a person needs to be able to fill. Make sure that you have a good person on your team or a whole team of people. There are some clinics who specialize in sensory issues. So if you can find one of those clinics, great, because then you have a whole team all in place that can help you. This video is to sort of give you an overview and maybe to help you if you are unable to find an occupational therapist. I know there are regions of the world where children have sensory issues, but the system is not set up yet for good support for those children and their families. If you live in one of those areas, hopefully this video can help you and can direct you to be doing some of these strategies yourselves until you can find a professional to help you. Talking about the visual modality of the sensory system, obviously it is what comes in through your eyes. I explore the world visually as my first language in this world. My eyes tell me more about the world than anything else from birth, unless I am visually impaired. And this video is not going to deal with that issue. This video is going to deal with the issue of children who need more visual sensory input. You might know that a child needs more visual sensory input if she wiggles her fingers up really close to her eyes, if she moves things by her eyes very quickly, if she stands really, really close to the television. And I should say at this point, please keep screens away from your kids. Keep your kids away from screens, both of those, at least until the age of 3. I know this feels like it's almost an impossibility in today's screen-centric world, but screens have been linked to communication delays and language delays and possibly cognitive delays, delays in IQ development in children. The more screen, the more delay. So please, just take screens out of your child's life. If you need to look at Pinterest, do it after your child is asleep. If you are in the airport, bring books, bring snacks, bring coloring, bring stickers. Don't just set your child in the plane with a screen. I realize there are certain circumstances where it's required that your child be self-entertained for a little while. I understand that. Don't make this a daily habit. And when it does happen, make it for as short a time as possible. We don't want your kids to develop delays of any kind, and we don't want delays that they might already have to get worse because we are feeding them all of this screen time. Okay, having said that, if your child stands really close to things, if your child is wiggling fingers, if your child is driving cars really close to her eyes, if she is really fascinated by lights and shadows and prisms and all of those sorts of things, if she turns the lights on and off, these are signals that your child might need more sensory input to her visual system through her eyes. In all situations where kids are seeking more sensory input, we want to try something called a sensory diet. This doesn't have anything to do with food. It has to do with regularly spaced experiences throughout the day of heavy focus in that area where the child needs more input. So for the sake of this video, we're talking about visual input. We might want to have 3 or 4 15-minute sessions spread out throughout the child's day of activities which really meet that visual input need. And here are some activities which might meet that need a little more appropriately. Let's talk first about spinning things, especially spinning light up things, like this chicken. I think I found this chicken and a bunch of eggs and maybe some rabbits last Easter time at CVS or Walgreens, something like that. Look how fun it is. The lights flash and spin. It has a nice vibration to it also, although that's not part of the visual sensory system. It is part of the proprioceptive sensory system, so it's good for that as well. He's cute. He's visually interesting, and he should be part, or someone like him, should be part of your visual sensory kit that you use with your child. Another option is a little, I wouldn't call it a game necessarily, an activity called gearation. Gearation has little spinning discs. There's one in the middle that is run with a battery, and then all of the rest of them connect to that gear and also spin. So everything's spinning at the same time. There are lots of different patterns. There are some sounds that happen with it, so it can also be good for the auditory extra stimulation your kids might need. It's really fun. It's really interesting for kids. They can get their faces really close up to it, or they can watch it from a little farther away. And it's very soothing. I find it very relaxing to watch this activity. Another option is car racetracks. There are a variety of different kinds. There's the old-fashioned 80s style one with the big track laid out on the ground, and then you hold the controllers and watch the cars zoom around. That is an option. I have a couple of different versions in my classroom. One of them is a very low-tech wooden version where the child puts the car down at the top and it goes roop, 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 and then it's at the bottom, and there are a bunch of different cars in cute colors. The cars themselves are super cute, and it is really fun and nice for those slow days where you might not want so much electronic noise going on in your home. One of my nieces was sick one time when she was just maybe a year or two old, and that was the only thing she wanted to do. Just put the car in and watch it go down. Put it in, watch it go down. Very soothing. Probably for us grown-ups, like scrolling through some sort of feed. It's just a visual soother to watch things go by. Watching cars go by on the freeway can be very soothing. Watching the waves roll in and out, although that has a lot more benefit than just that. It's those kind of activities are what we're looking for here. Another racetrack I have in my class is one that you turn on and the cars get pulled up the hill and then they slide down the little motorway. It's very cute. There's also a helicopter that spins around at the top. Anything that spins around is great in this category. I also have a penguin racetrack, and most kids really like this because the penguins are just so cute. They're very tiny, and they also climb up an iceberg, and then they slide down, and then they climb up again. No intervention is required except for the penguins always tip over or get stuck or whatever, so the kids have to slightly adjust it. But it, once again, is a very soothing activity that provides a lot of visual input. I also want to recommend marble runs of various kinds. I have one that is your more traditional marble run where you build it and then put the marble in and it runs down and spins stuff and goes around in circles and goes down little stairs and goes brrr, and then it ends up at the bottom and the kid puts it at the top again. Those kind of marble runs are fantastic for this sort of input. It usually requires an adult to build the marble run tower, and then the child can use it because it requires some higher level problem solving skills to be able to build those towers and some visual spatial awareness. I'm surprised that I have learned over the years how to build them because I'm not an engineer. Also, there are less intense versions of these that can be used by 1-year-old child where the ball is large instead of a tiny marble. The ball is large and you just kind of poke it down the hole and then it goes around in a circle and goes down the next hole, and there are just 2 holes. And that is also a fun activity for kids, especially the younger kids, and especially when you don't want to be building a huge tower. It's very helpful. As you can see, none of these activities are especially weird or strange. None of these things would be out of place in a home. These are all activities that any child would enjoy, which makes it great because then your child who needs more visual input is not going to look out of place dealing with these activities, playing with these toys. Your child is going to be more interesting. We have all sorts of kids who walk by my classroom, see us playing with these toys, and want to come join us because the toys are so much fun. That's the kind of activities that we want. Not only can we provide that visual input to our kids, but we also can increase peer interaction when the activities that we pick are especially interesting. Now that we have an idea of some of these activities that might provide good visual input, let's talk about, once again, about the sensory diet idea. So in the morning when your child wakes up, she's ready for sensory input. She's been sleeping all night, hopefully, and now she needs some input. So let's start the day with 15 minutes of 5 minutes of racetrack, 5 minutes of gear ration, and 5 minutes of rocket balloons. I forgot to mention rocket balloons are a great thing in the area of visual input because you blow them up and then they zoom all over and you have to watch them with your eyes. It's very cool. So we do those 3 activities for 5 minutes each. That's 15 minutes of visual input right there. If your child goes to school, then when she gets home, we have another session of heavy input time. Another sensory meal, you might call it. And then maybe after dinner and then right before bed, or however you can spread these out. 3 to 4 per day is ideal. From what we see, children who have these sensory meals spread out through their day of appropriate sensory input that they need more of, the less seeking they do during the day because they're getting those needs met in more appropriate ways and at an appropriate level. They're not trying to gather that sensory input throughout the day just kind of desperately. Instead, they're getting some nice meals of healthy visual input or whatever kind of input they need, and they are able to feel satisfied with that, and therefore the inappropriate sensory seeking behaviors decrease. That is the goal of what we're doing here with this sensory diet. Okay, that is my video on visual sensory seeking behavior and how we can meet those needs better in the home. I hope it was helpful for you. Be on the lookout. I'll be back next week with a video about olfactory sensory seeking behavior and how we can meet those needs in your home. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon. Bye.